So guys, we're going to try something a little different today. I played with the algorithm slightly and looked up agnosticism for videos and information, and I ran across a video by Alan Watts on religion. And I'll tell you, that kind of intrigued me because I had seen some of his, or at least one of his videos before on like time, value, money, and your ego, stuff like that. And, you know, he's a philosopher, so he can really say some things that have you stop and ponder. Like, you're like, I really need to think about what this guy is saying. So when he popped up in the feed, I was like, wow, that's awesome. I want to dig in to hear what this guy's got to say. And I was really, really disappointed. And let me tell you why. Alan has an incredible voice. I mean, he has a wonderful voice for capturing an audience's attention. And along with that, he is very knowledgeable. He wrote like 20-something books, 20-plus books during his career, and he was very familiar with the Eastern religions. And so when you have a very appealing voice, you can appeal to presentation, like I have mentioned before. That actually needs to be a logical argument, the appeal to presentation. And then also, because he's got a lot of information, there's kind of an appeal to authority there. And now we've got a third thing that Alan has going for him, and since he's already passed, he died 1971, I believe it was. Now he's got historical precedent because he was popular, and now he's part of human history because he's well known enough. You've also got the appeal to authority. And so this guy is really dangerous. Like, if what he is saying is accurate, which it isn't, if what was saying was accurate, it would be very potent, and he seems to be very potent, and you're like, oh. So the point I really wish to emphasize for you is just because somebody knows a lot about X does not mean that they know about Y. Can you imagine somebody that knew a ton of information about firefighters? They had studied them. They knew their psychological condition. They knew their health. They knew their political stance. They knew their marriage habits, their saving habits, their personality type. That doesn't mean the person studying that would know anything about the methodology of firefighting. And that's basically the trick here that Alan Watts throws on his audience. He knows all this stuff about Eastern mysticism and religion, and he really bakes that in. But because of his voice and because of his knowledge and because of his credentialing, and whoever was framing this video for all that, because of all that, he just dives into undermining Christianity and dives all in like he's an authority and an expert on this. And he starts off by saying, like, we got the Bible thanks to the Catholic Church. And it's probably some sort of mention to the 300s or whatnot, when the stamp of approval was given by, you know, the Roman emperor, and they're like, oh, we got this edict and this, that, and the other going on. But where do you have in history someone stating that the Catholic Church created the Bible? Where do you have that at? This is not the way that plays out. And you can tell automatically that Alan doesn't know what he's talking about. He knows information and he's made speculations. But to just say that the Bible was created by the Catholic Church, that's a very big statement. We're going to dig into that in a second. But then he goes straight into, like, we get it from the Catholic Church. They made up the New Testament. They just created the New Testament out of thin air. What? Are you kidding? This is absolutely not the case. And let me just ask some logic questions here. Let's just learn how to ask really good questions when people make statements. Is if the Catholic Church itself wrote the New Testament, then why do they practice things that are absolutely against the New Testament? Two come to mind really quickly, like call no man father and don't pray repetitive prayers. So did the Catholic Church early on believe this? And did they write the scriptures in that way and then change their practice later to conflict with it? Well, if they did that and they've got control over it, why wouldn't they change the writing to match? Why is it still call no man father and don't pray repetitive prayers? And it's always been that way for as long back as you can trace any New Testament writing. Further, why do we historically know that the Catholic Church actually kept the Bible in Latin so that the people, the uneducated people, couldn't, abuse it? Well, actually, what it does was gave the Catholic Church power. This is called the Dark Ages, from 1500 AD to back to 500 AD. And why would they need to control it? If they actually wrote the text to be followed, to support them, to undergird them, they would actually want to publish that information. Can you imagine somebody wanting to run for president and they create a bunch of information to help them get into office, and they create this system that makes them, powerful, but then they change it and put it into a foreign language where you can't read it? That doesn't make any logical sense. And so his argument here is just really, really weak to say, oh, the Catholic Church did this and it just made up New Testament stuff. Well, then he jumps over, and because he's got this elegant voice and he's talking and he's mysterious, and he jumps in and all of a sudden he starts talking about the Synod of Jamnia or the Council of Jamnia. And I'm just kind of shocked. I was like, I always take note when I hear something I've never heard before. I'm like, man, I've got a pretty solid Bible education. And I've been reading the Bible a long time and studying Christian history off and on for a while. And I've never heard of the Council of Jamnia, so I probably need to dig in. Well, here's one of the reasons that a lot of very educated followers of Scripture have never heard of these things. And maybe not the very educated would be aware of this, okay? One of the reasons they wouldn't have heard about it is because there's actual history, things that really happen, and there's things that people speculate that happen, like that they want to have happened, that they make assumptions to have happened. And that's exactly what the case here is. Heinrich Gratz was reading about some kind of debate, and in this debate, he assumes then, he's like, oh, because there's a debate, that there must have been a council. Oh, and that council, these people were close to this town, so there must have been a Council of Jamnia. Well, just because you read about a debate just means there was a debate. Anything beyond that is speculation. And if you, as the atheist or the agnostic, don't like assumptions in your science and know that it can really mess things up, why would we want to put assumptions into text, into history that we read? Like, it's just a whole bunch of nonsense. Well, then in Alan Watts's, powerful presentation, he jumps right over into the Masoretic text, 1000 AD. And I think it's really funny there that he talks about the Masoretic text in 1000 AD, because the BCE and CE hadn't come along yet. Before Christ era and Christ era, for you that are paying attention. So, all of a sudden he jumps in like, oh, the Catholic Church made it up. And besides, we don't really have a complete Bible until the year 1000. What? Like, just because we have a complete Bible from that time period doesn't negate everything that happened before that time period. So, for instance, why did he ignore the 24,000 manuscripts and book pieces and page pieces that we have from early on? I'm talking 1st century AD. Why does he just skip all of that information? Why does he skip the fact that the early church fathers, there were people commenting and writing about the Bible early on, who in their writings capture almost every single word of scriptures? And so even if we didn't have the scriptures because of all the commentary on the scriptures, we'd still have the scriptures. Or why does he ignore things like the Oxyrhynchus Papyri, that there are thousands and thousands of yet untranslated Greek pieces of information that were just thrown away? I think it's upwards of 500,000. And out of the ones that we've already translated, there's a whole lot of Bible verses in them. Why does Alan Watts just ignore these facts and talk about speculative history? And I think it's because of a core reason. If the Bible is true, it speaks about humanity being against it, of humanity having a sin nature that it doesn't really want to hear from the Bible. It doesn't want to hear that the Bible is true. And because Alan Watts knows this, he tells people what they want to hear to be pleasing to them, and as such to gain an audience. So the question I have for you is, do you really want the truth about things? Or do you just want to feel good when people are talking to you?